Okay, so without further ado, let's begin with the second session entitled Setting Up Guidance Virtual Room by Mr. Dan Abrogina from Xavier School San Juan. So,
Okay.
Sir Dan, take it away.
Thank you, Stan. So, good afternoon, everyone. I am Mr. Adan Abrogina. Students call me Mr. Dan. I'm currently a grade 9 guidance counselor, and I have been a guidance counselor in Xavier for 20 years and handled levels as early as grade 2 and as late as grade 10. So for today, I'm going to discuss about setting up the guidance virtual room. And some of the things that I'm going to discuss are not relatively new, but I will further dwell more on some issues about the guidance virtual. So before going to the actual topic, I would just like to have a preview of the physical guidance setup during the pre-pandemic period. So as a guidance counselor, it's very easy to make one's presence felt through the students because one, you could just simply make your daily supervisions, morning, recess, after lunch, and your students could physically see you. And also, GCs could call students anytime, and there's a big assurance that they will show up because if they don't, you could just simply get them and pick them up from the classrooms where they are in. Also, during the physical setup, the the guidance counselor's office is a place where all students know that they could go to. Either it's about counseling, emergency cases, non-counseling related stuff, or even simply just borrowing stuff from the guidance counselor. They know that there's always a place where they could go to. So no one was prepared for the challenge of the online setup. The pandemic came in so swift that we were not able to accustom ourselves with the online setup. But we had no choice but to adjust. And as a guidance counselor, there had been a lot of things that had troubled me at the beginning. First is that having the Zoom setup almost made it very difficult to see students. Unlike before where you could just go to one classroom and excuse a student for an interview, now students have to prioritize attending their Zoom classes and coordinating with synchronous and asynchronous sessions because we cannot just pull out we cannot pull up students during sessions is troublesome. The same thing with supervision. Supervision simply becomes a hop in, hop out of each Zoom link that students would barely notice if you were there. Interactions were very limited. And at the beginning, most of the concerns and interactions we had with our students are based on emails or messages on learning management systems, which are quite impersonal and could be subject to misinterpretation of some messages because we cannot really set the tone because sometimes it depends on how the reader interprets our emails. So there's really the need for the presence of the counselor in the online setup, especially now that it's very challenging in terms of mental health and how students cope up during the pandemic season, how interactions become limited. They are shut off with the things that they like doing, shut off with the common interaction with other students, and it's a challenge. Okay, even the dynamics inside the home that even if they see each other that often, it becomes more challenging because before they had their own personal spaces and now it's like that their parents are all there all the time, so it's quite challenging. So what is a guidance virtual room? So it's just a space where the counselor communicate with the students, and there's typically two things that we do here. So there's the formal guidance virtual room, and there's the informal guidance virtual room. So going to the formal side, that is the common practice of all schools. So in the formal setup, That's the time where students, where the guidance counselor call for students, ask them to go to a particular Zoom link or Google Meets, and that's the time they discuss anything related about counseling. And there's value with a face-to-face counseling rather than just a one-way, just a photo that you've been counseling. You have to see, okay, who's the other person on the other line. Why is that? Because number one, connectedness. Okay. When you see the person you're talking to, even if it's virtual, there's already that feeling of being connected rather than talking to a picture or a set of photos in a Zoom background. It's more challenging for a teacher, right? So how much more in a counseling session? Second, if the counselor, if the student sees the counselor, there's a sense of security and safety. They know who they're talking to. They don't need to imagine things. And thirdly, the nuances of counseling. So when you see the person you're talking to, you see the nonverbal cues, facial expressions, body language, and the like. So in the formal setup, this is where we do our routine interview. That's where we call students, all students, okay, at least once in a school year to get to know how they are and how they've been doing. Also, we do the individual counseling, group counseling if they have particular concerns. Could be counselor initiated, referred by a teacher or a parent, or it could be student initiated. And we also do here our parent-teacher conferences, and we also do our consultation on different areas. So I think most of us are doing this. But what I want to discuss more is the informal setup. Okay. So in the informal setup, we have here the guidance virtual room. It's more oftenly called a guidance tambayan or a guidance hangout. It's just opening up a Zoom link at a particular time of the day where students could go to for anything. So why is it important to have such thing? Okay. Because students are longing for connection with not only with people at home, but with friends and other people in the community. Me personally, I'm very close with my students. I've had students who had for us as grade 2, okay, who now graduated college, and they're still connected with me. Yeah. So connection is very important and interaction. So why make a guidance virtual room or a guidance hangout where students could just simply make their own and invite other students? So first is that having a particular room makes all students go at a particular time at a particular time of the day with no where there's a student who has no upper hand. What do I mean by that? Okay. So if a student makes a messenger group and invites other student or a Discord account, okay, that means that particular student has the upper hand of who to accept, okay, who could he boot out, okay, etc. But the guidance virtual room is accepting of all students. So friendship is not required. Even if you have no friends, you could just go to the virtual room and talk to the counselor. And hoping that with the other students in the room, you're able to make connections and make friendships. So the guidance virtual room is something that is not structured. So anything could happen in the guidance virtual room. In the past, it's just a space where students could just be themselves and chat with other students. Being the guidance counselor, you could just be a background while the students chat or interact with them as well when you see that a student is left out. So listening to students, talking to them, okay, sharing what happened. At the same time, if there are things that are not proper or correct, you could always share and correct some things. So also, it's a room where students could share what happened during the day. Sometimes students would vent out what happened in the previous classes, subjects, encounter with teachers or students, difficulties with assignments, okay? Synchronous sessions being too lengthy, asynchronous sessions being too hard. So we see the struggles of the students based on their eyes. So it's a way to listen to them and get a glimpse of what's happening in their class, even if you yourself is not there. Okay. Also, students could initiate activities in the virtual room. We've had students who would play games we play category game, hangman, or sometimes students would stream their Among Us game. Also, it's a venue where students could show their skills and interests. One student would show a magic trick that he learned from a summer class, or a drawing that he uploads in YouTube, okay, and stream. And we had a student who shares his passion in Japanese culture, so manga, food, etc. So where students could just be there and think of anything, chat about any topic that they prefer. We had a thematic session before that students would try to reminisce what it was like during physical school. And there was a time a student showed his pet, okay, to the group, or a student showed his sibling in the group. Later, I will be showing some pictures of that. Also, in the hope that over these light things, the openness with the guidance counselor and familiarity would make the student more at ease in asking for help from the guidance counselor. When they know that there's consistency in the presence of the guidance counselor, and that he's reachable at a designated time, because we have to admit it that we don't monitor our internet 24 hours of the day. But here, if they know that at that particular time, they could see their guidance counselor and could bring their concerns, then be it. So I would receive private messages during the sessions, and they would refer themselves or refer classmates about certain concerns. During those guidance sessions, I have referrals of students hurting themselves or students being bullied, and they just set it in private messages casually, as if they were not sending me a message. So it is in knowing that there's a place, okay, gives them a sense of parang an emergency hotline where they could go to. And actually, some students would look forward going to this virtual room, because it's a way where it's not academic. We have to admit some students go to school not just to study, but to be with their friends. So it's a good way to connect with other people. I'll be showing some pictures, okay, of what we do. So here is just simply students coming on groups. So if the group is small, we could just put them in one room. And if students would ask to be placed in a breakout room, then we could do that as well. If they want to discuss some things in private. So here are a number of students coming. They don't come at the same time. Some would come earlier, so I would get a notice from my email, and I would open the guidance room earlier. Or some would just eat first, or some would eat during the session and just tell them what happened. They just share what happened during the movie. Okay. So here is one time they're happy to show their brothers, okay, with the other students. So they're also from Xavier. So they're showing them. They joined our session. Here is an activity where we played Put a Finger Down. So each student would think of 5 things. So put a finger down if you've had an accident, put a finger down if you've had a girlfriend, etc. Okay, so each had his turn. here was about a school spirit. Sometimes a teacher would join us, okay, to check on students. Actually, I did not know that I will be talking about this in the future. I just take random pics when I enjoyed our activity. So here is one of the students showing his pet dog to the other students. Uh, Here is some the usual sharing, just chat, okay, no activity, and a lot more. So you wouldn't really know what would happen in the guidance virtual room, which makes it exciting for me also to look forward and meet students. Sometimes I have work or meeting, and I just tell students that I'll just be on the background and I'll be listening. So it's just opening that particular space where they know that they could go to and just express and themselves. Okay. So that's just my thought and hope you learned a thing or two from that. Okay. It's very simple but very meaningful for some students.
Okay, thank you for that, Sir Dan. And I'm sure our listeners had a lot to learn from your session. Indeed, like what Ma'am Polly commented, it's important to create a safe space for our students where they will feel accepted and understood. So right now we can begin our Q&A session, and we have until 3:20 for this. So that's about 14 minutes left. And I'm sure our listeners had a couple of questions for us, for you. Um, so to ask your question, you may feel free to unmute yourself, type it in the chat box, or if you wish to be anonymous, you may direct your question to me personally and I'll read it out loud.
Okay.
Okay, so we actually have a couple of questions here in the chat box. The first being, how many times a week do you normally do this?
Okay. It actually depends on your availability, but I do it every day, 30 minutes a day on the first 30 minutes of lunch break. So aside from the guidance counselors, there are also other departments who did this, like the campus ministry and service, but they open only once a week, but at the end of the day. And, and what is the schedule of the informal guidance virtual room? As mentioned, it depends on your availability. As long as it's promoted well, so that the students would know, at this particular time, there's a place where I could go to. So it's not necessarily every day, but it's just in knowing that there's a place at that particular time where I could go.
Thank you for that, Sir Dan.
Mm.
The others may feel free to unmute themselves or type in their question in the chat box.
I'll just pick up also with what Polly Villanueva mentioned. Actually, the guidance virtual room attracts the students who mostly have few friends or loners, or those who are socially awkward. So it's good that even if they don't make friends, there's an adult that they could talk to, consult, and interact with. Are there any other questions?
So I guess to keep the ball rolling, I myself can ask you a question if that's okay.
Surely.
Um, my question would be, sir, what were the challenges that you faced when you set up this virtual room, and how did you overcome these challenges?
Okay. So the first challenge is that having different personalities in one room, and students would be, for example, in comments, okay, would make unnecessary comments that are offending, etc. So it's good to establish rules, okay, on how the guidance counselors room go about. So if a student does not follow, there are times that I put them in a waiting room, and then I had a one-on-one chat with them, okay, and how it could be, how their behavior is offending, or etc. But also, it's good to establish rapport with students. I'm lucky to have followed. The guidance virtual room had been open for 2 years, and I'm lucky that I have followed the students, so they're familiar with me. So siguro that's one of the advantages, establishing rapport is one key that for them to be comfortable and not feel that they're watched during the session. Okay.
Okay, so we have another question from Ma'am Grace Santos. Did you
Mhm.
ever had a time when you had a lot of students in the meet? How are you able to manage it? Do you have some activities prepared or do you let the students initiate the activity?
Okay. There had been a time that I had 16 students, and some students would request to be put in a breakout room, and some usually they initiate activities, but sometimes they would ask. So I have some activities on top of my head that we do. So that's the one thing I showed is yung put the finger down. Okay. It's an easy game, and we had a category game like think of brands of cars, and each would give an answer so that everyone would have the time to participate, and the next time they will be the one who will give the category. And sometimes we just hang out there. All right, they had the topic and then other people would speak. And also there are times that students would not participate. All right, they would just stay there and learn. All right, but we just allow them. All right, it's a good start that they're in the room, and hopefully when they're more comfortable they'll open up eventually.
Thank you for that, Sir Dan. We have another question from Ma'am Nerissa. How do you sustain the interest of students to visit the virtual room? How do you manage awkward silence if the students are not interacting with each other?
Okay. Usually when there's silence, okay, that's the time that the guidance counselor involves himself or asks questions. The simple thing like, oh, how was your day? How was the last subject? Or are there things that you're gonna do, or do you have any plans for the weekend? So we do that. And sometimes students come and go for like they would just drop by for 5 minutes and say, I have an assignment, I have to work on that and leave. So make sure lang that in the interaction, there's no monopoly of just one student talking. Sometimes it happens that student is too engrossed with what he wants to share and would not listen to other people. So that's the time the guidance counselor interfere or would say like, they have something to say, or I wasn't able to hear you, boy B, something like that. So that each of them will have an equal chance to to share and open up. I had a student before. Uh, Anything that's not, because he likes Japanese culture, so anything that's not Japanese, he tries to put down. Okay? And guidance counselor had to say that yes, in your eyes, okay, the Japanese culture could be superior in most aspects, but okay, the experiences of others, okay, have might have a different perspective on other cultures as well. So just like that. But the guidance counselor should not be like the nagging type or the one who lectures a lot. It's more of the listening, no? And interacts only once. I mean corrects only once in a while, or else baka yun nga ma-off sila and then they don't visit anymore. Yeah.
Thank you for that, Sir Dan. Are there any other questions?
Siguro what's good also with the virtual room is that yun nga, when there are referrals, okay, from this particular students. So we cannot monitor all students. Teachers could not always see okay what they need to refer. But sometimes students open up with other students, and that's the time when the students are confident with the guidance counselor, then they could share and refer. Okay. Ah,
Okay, we have another question, sir,
mm,
from Ma'am Kaizen. When students share about themselves, how do you ensure privacy and confidentiality among other participants?
okay. We usually tell that what we've discussed in the guidance virtual room stays in the guidance virtual room. So it's not something that they could discuss outside. But if they want to involve other students, then invite them to the guidance virtual room. We usually have like when because time flies so fast when you're conversing of other topics. So we usually say that, oh, tomorrow let's continue that, okay? Because it's time already, and uh, we need to cut the session for that particular time. Or there were some students also who would like to monopolize the guidance virtual room. Like they enjoyed hangman game the day before. The next day they want to play hangman again. Okay. But not all students are into it. So we just tell them that, oh, we just played that yesterday. Let's give opportunity for another student to lead or to initiate an activity for this day, and maybe we could have it at another time.
I guess while waiting for the others, is it okay if I ask another question to
Sure,
you?
sure. As we
Okay, so what do you think, sir, is the importance is in sustaining these rooms? So right earlier, it was mentioned that it serves as a safe space. So aside from that, why do you think it's important that we have virtual rooms like this?
Okay, when you have that room that you know that it's open on a daily basis, when something happens to a student, they know that I could go to that particular room. Okay, and my guidance counselor will be there to attend to me. Not later, not tomorrow, but at that time. So having that, okay, is already an assurance for students that there's a person that I could go to anytime, okay, at that particular time.
Thank you for that, sir. It looks like we don't have any other questions left. So would you have final words, I guess, to our listeners before we end the session?
Siguro, if you have your own guidance virtual room, one thing that is needed is for you to be authentic. Okay? When you're not interested with the topic that the students are sharing, just tell them, I don't know anything about it. When the students see that you're real and true, then they'll open up more with you. Okay, that's just it.
Okay, thank you so much, Sir Dan, our speaker, and to our participants. I'm sure they had a lot to learn from your session about setting up a virtual room and just keeping in touch with their students. Um, so right now we'll be moving on to our 10-minute break. Well, 12-minute break before we proceed to Sir Juan Flojo's session. But before that, does everyone want to take a picture with Sir Dan?
Yes, please.
Um, if you want to turn on your cameras, you may do so. Sir, I can take the picture and then I'll just send it to your email.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's just wait for the others.
Hi, Ma'am Neri. Thank you, Sir Dan.
Okay, thank you. I'll just put my email po if you have questions at the chat.
Sure, sir. Okay, so sir typed in his email, so just direct more questions to that if you have. But right now, let's take the picture. 3, 2, 1. Okay, one more. 3, 2, 1. Okay, once again, thank you so much, Sir Dan, and thank you so much to our participants. I'll be stopping the recording now.